The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are in this great world. I'm Jack Molisani. I'll be your host for the LavaCon Career Webinar Series, and I'm also your speaker today. And today's topic is the top 10 mistakes professionals make when looking for work. My Twitter feed is at Jack Molisani. If you want to tweet during this presentation will be recorded and we will send out a link afterwards. All right, a little bit about me. Why am I here speaking to y'all today? I'm the president of ProSpring Technical Staffing, a search firm that specializes in content professionals. I'm also the executive director of the LavaCon Conference on Content Strategy, and I'm the author of Be the Captain of Your Career, a new approach to career planning and advancement that hit number 5 on Amazon's career and resume bestseller list when it was first released. This session will last about 20 minutes, maybe 30. I leave plenty of time for questions and let you go and enjoy your lunch afterwards. All right, so a little bit about today's session. In this presentation, I'm going to talk about recruiters. And by that, I mean both HR internally and an external agent like myself. Recruiters receive tens, if not hundreds of resumes a day. If you want them to help you get a job, do what you can to help them do their jobs. And it works both ways. And the mistakes I'm going to make or cover in this presentation, Freudian slip, are the order is in which people tend to make them, not in order of severity. Some of the mistakes are more deadly than others. And then we'll end with, now that we tell you what not to do, we'll summarize what to do. All right. Mistake number 1, not following submission directions. That old adage about the first impression lasts, it's true. And the very first impression we get of you is whether or not you have followed the submission directions. People often ask me, should I send a formatted resume, a PDF, a text version, whatever the directions specify. If they don't specify something, instead of sending a Word document, I tend to recommend PDF. Word documents have extra information about you called metadata. And if you create a PDF first, that will strip a lot of the metadata out. But that's another whole session that we could do on what is metadata and why is it in Word files. Now, I'm also often asked, okay, you say to follow submission directions and the job says no calls, but it's been 2 weeks and I haven't heard anything. What do I do? My opinion and what has worked in the past is I think it's a very valid thing to call, ask for somebody in HR and say, I applied for this position 2 weeks ago. I did not get an automated response. I'm just calling to verify that you received it. Could you check your database? And most people would be okay with that. Not pick up the phone, call the hiring manager and ask them, why haven't you hired me yet? Not so good. All right, mistake number 2, not building professional relationships. If you wait till you're out of work to start networking, that's too late. You should have a professional network already lined up that you've been working for years. Go to STC, Society for Technical Communication meetings, go to content strategy meetups, form a LinkedIn profile, network with your peers. If you are working with an outside agency, ask to meet that recruiter, right? If they say, oh, no, we don't meet our candidates, that's a red flag. You want to be sure you're working with a reputable recruiter. Plus, you want someone who will sing your praises to the next person in the hiring process, especially if you're not an exact match or have an odd situation. So I or one of your peers could submit you going, hi, I know you wanted 5 years of XYZ. They only have 2, but they just won an award with the STC. I really think you should take a look at them. And that recommendation will carry weight. And finally, when a great job's come in, who do you think we're going to call first? We're going to call the people we know. So if I have something in Chicago, I know who to call in Chicago. If I have something in Portland, Oregon, I know who to call in Portland. And we'll give them the first crack at these jobs. So definitely network in various social organizations, professional organizations, and build your network. And by the way, you don't have to wait till the end If you want to ask a question, I've got the chatbot question box open. So if you want to ask a question, go right ahead. Number 3, bad manners. It's poor form to mail your resume to 45 recruiters in one email, especially when you display them all in the to field, and I'm the 27th recruiter. Now you think I'm kidding? I have a few visual aids. I'm going to attempt to tab open to that one. Here you go. From need job to blah, 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 blah. And I'm way the hell down here somewhere. So that does not make me feel special. So don't do that. Also, keep a log of where your resume has been sent. Notice that I didn't say where you sent your resume. A lot of times, if you're working with an agent, they will send you out without your knowledge. So be sure to tell them, do not send my resume out unless I give you permission, because I may have already been presented there. Another thing is, I was working with a candidate once, and I take some time to go through your resume, do a summary of how your experience matches the job requirements, and I submitted them, and the hiring manager went, oh, he applied for this job this morning on himself. I'm going, Bob? He goes, well, I can't remember every place I sent my resume. I go, yes, you can. It's called writing. So keep a log of where your resume has been sent. And finally, don't insult the recruiter. I'm not kidding. It happens. Let's do another visual aid. All right. This is a email that was sent to me who wanted me to help him find a job. If I do business with you, it cannot be your job to interpret my resume or discern if I qualify for a job before I ask you to send the resume. I don't have time to explain or tutor you in the things that I know in relation to a client's job description. You would be getting in the way and wasting time. Also, educated writers are not limited by their by their education or experience about what they start to write. You might be referring to the new age dumb-downs, the itsy-bitsy-poos of the writing world called word processing people who pretend to be tech writers. I come along and have to clean up their blank text. Their being able to use a piece of software as an expert is not the same as being educated. It seems that by your name, me, foreign-born, your writing ability, and your writing comprehension, you have trouble with the English language and its semantics. Huh? I went, Bob, come read this. Why would you do that to someone who you want them to find you a job? And I'll tell you, us recruiters, we all know each other, and we share things like this. And just so you don't think this is an isolated incident, I'm going to read a second email. All right, so this one takes some background. If you were on last week's webinar, you'll remember that the most common mistakes I see in a resume, especially tech writer resumes, is a mix of end dashes and hyphens in a resume date ranges. If you do space hyphen space, Microsoft Word changes a hyphen to a dash for you. If you do space hyphen up arrow, it does not. And this candidate had several problems with his resume, one of which was a mix of end dashes and hyphens, spaces, no spaces, date ranges. So I thought I was being helpful in pointing these things out, saying, because he mentioned he has not been getting interviews. I said, this might be why. This was his response. Have you seriously thought about a career change? It's quite obvious you are lacking intuitive skills. It's hilarious when people try to find fault in people's resumes, especially when they're unqualified to do so. Hyphens and end dashes, you appear to be unqualified, not suited, not represented to the factor, whichever sounds appropriate in your case. You pick them. You really need to rethink exactly what your job description is. You wouldn't know what a journalist is if it hit you in the face. It doesn't take a rocket science to figure out that you're not technical. Das Vidanya misspelled. Right? So, yeah, that's not a good way to have someone help you find a job. So, don't do that. All right, back to the presentation. Another mistake is applying for a job you're not even remotely qualified for, or for a job for which you are not qualified for, you grammarians. Pay attention to the must-have versus nice-to-haves. It's one thing if they have a laundry list of 26 things and you only have 25 of them, but if they say must-have experience writing nuclear regulatory documentation and you don't, well, that's just a waste of everybody's time. So do apply for jobs that may be a little bit of a stretch, but at least be in the ballpark. All right, if you leave with nothing else today, leave with this. The biggest mistake is not summarizing how your skills match the job requirements. If you were on last week's webinar about resumes, you'll remember that. I hope you remember that. My definition of a resume is just a vehicle that shows that you match what the reader's looking for. And that's all it is. And so is a job application. If you're applying for a job, you should show me how you match what I'm looking for. Don't go making me look for it. Remember, we don't have time to read your whole resumes. We'll just skim for keywords, and we may miss things that you wanted us to see. And truthfully, any HR person can't possibly understand what makes you a good blank, content strategist, tech writer, whatever it is you do, as well as you do. So do you really want somebody who's not a professional deciding if you're good enough to pass on? The way to fix that is that you submit a summary of how your experience matches each of the job requirements. And this is where you say, oh, I don't have XYZ, but I do have this, which is close. All right. So let's go back to our visual aids. First thing I'm going to show you is how not to do this. Again, thought I was being helpful. I prompted applicants for each of the job requirements, give me a sample of how you match. This was their response. Let's look at the bad response first. Requirements: 5+ years experience documenting client-server databases. Answer: since scanning resumes is the best way to see how a candidate matches the job requirement, your note is a bit misguided. What exactly are you doing in this process? One would think a motivated and technical recruiter would be able to match experience to requirements. I have documented client-server database applications for the last 5 years. Thank you. You couldn't have just gone with that last sentence. You had to diss me. All right. This is a really good way to not get a job interview. All right. So don't do that. Now, here's an example of, and I've even had someone said, see the resume, see the resume, see the resume. Okay. Yeah, that's all I'm going to say on that. Let's look at another example. Now, this one's not formatted right because I just pulled this in from another program. All right, but here's an example. Requirement: can read mechanical drawings. I have designed components and systems for hydraulic dampening systems using the following standard, which is what the standard required was. Previous experience with SolidWorks. I have logged over 500 hours of SolidWorks. And I could go down this and go, yep, got everything I need. Off you go to the next person in line. See how easy that makes it? All right. Now, here's a little bit of a secret that is not in the slide. I once submitted a couple candidates to a customer, took them out to lunch to go over the resumes, and all he had was the resumes. And he goes, well, I don't see where this person did blank. Well, I said, well, it's in the cover letter. He goes, oh, I don't read the cover letters. The reason most recruiters or companies don't read the cover letters is because normally they're just generic. Dear such and so, I want to be part of your established organization. I want to grow as an individual, blah, blah, blah. If you do follow my advice and do that table of how my experience matches each of the job requirements, put it as the first page of your resume document. So they open your resume, they'll see it. They may page down to it, but at least they put eyeballs on it. But if you do this, suddenly the recruiter loves you. I didn't have to search for the information I was looking for. You typed the summary for me. You pointed out important information I may have missed, and all I had to do is verify that you match, and off you go to the next person in line. So this is what I mean. Make it easy for someone to hire you. All right, let's go on. Misnaming your resume. We get tens, if not hundreds, of resumes a day. Name your resume so it can be found. joejones.doc. Do you have any idea how many resumes.doc I get a day? And if that gets separated from your email, I have no idea whose resume that is unless I open it, which takes time, which I don't have. Also, don't be clever. Just joejones@gmail.com or Joe Jones job hunting so you could kill the email afterwards is far more professional than happybuzzed@sugarjunkie.org. And in case you think I'm making this up, let's look at some actual emails people have used to apply for jobs. I've switched them around a little bit to protect the innocent. No mango for you @hotmail.com. Okay, 53 at Yahoo. I like Kayak Boy 11. Addicted to coffee at AOL. That was a programmer. Real cranky at Yahoo. Now, personally, I want to put addicted to coffee and real cranky in the same room at the same time just to see what would happen. Some of these are like a sexual harassment lawsuit ready to happen. Little China Girl Colleen, Sheep 11 at Sheep 13 at Yahoo. That means there are 13 sheep people ahead of him. So grammar whore at Yahoo, really? You use that email to apply for the job? Yeah, don't do this. All right, next. Errors in your resume. Your resume is the first sample of your writing skill and attention to detail. Hiring managers judge candidates based on their resumes, and they will disqualify you if they find errors in your resume. Especially if we get 25 applicants, half of whom had perfect resumes, half of whom are really good matches. Those are the people we submit. Now, if we get one resume in, and that's all I have to submit, well, I might submit you with a disclaimer that here's somebody, they have this, notice that the typo on page 2 of the resume. So that shows the manager that I'm doing my job. I did see it. I'm not going to fix it for you because then I'm no longer accurately representing you to my client or to you. And then finally, make sure you have 0 defects in your resume. A manager once told me that I used to think tech writers were the only people who this applied to, that programmers could get away with typos. And I don't even believe that anymore, because I once had a hiring manager tell me, if this person can't write 2 pages of error-free resume, how could I possibly expect her to write 20,000 lines of error-free code? Okay. Spell check, give it to somebody else to spell check. 0 defects in your resume. This next one I call misevaluation of importances. You should evaluate what's important, what's not, and handle accordingly. So I tell people to highlight your strengths and minimize your weaknesses. For example, if you're applying for a network documentation job and your degree's in computer engineering, put that at the top of the resume. If you're applying for a network engineering position and your degree's in basket weaving or library sciences, not that I've got anything against librarians, but it doesn't show that you match what I'm looking for, and some misguided engineer might think, somebody with a degree in basket weaving couldn't possibly understand what we do here, despite the fact you've been doing it for 25 years. So again, if there's something that doesn't show that you match what the reader is looking for, put it at the bottom of the resume. And the most applicable experience at the top. All right, number 9. Not anticipating questions and answering them up front. Recruiters will wonder about oddities in resumes, so be proactive and explain them. For example, gaps in your work history. I know people who took 2-3 years off to raise children, and they're ready to enter the workforce, which is fine. I just need to know that. Don't make me call you and ask. On the other hand, I know people who've been unemployed for 3 years, and I'll tell you, I'm not saying this is a good or righteous thing. I'm just saying it exists. There is a assumption amongst many HR and recruiters that if you've been unemployed for that long, it's because you're damaged goods and you're not hireable, right? So, although, what have you been doing for the past 3 years? Sitting at home watching TV, eating Del Monte cling peaches and heavy syrup? If nothing else, go out and get a volunteer job at Save the Bay, Habitat for Humanity. Pick a thing, and you can say, from 2015 to present, independent contractor working for clients such as, while looking for a full-time staff position, and then shows that you've got some work ethic. All right. Your citizenship or work visa status. Having just been dissed by someone that assumed I was foreign born because of my last name, I'm a little sensitive to cultural insensitivity, if that makes sense. But if your name is Andre Sengupta and your degree is from Bombay University, I'm going to want to know what your citizenship is. So if you're a U.S. citizen, just put Andre Sengupta, U.S. citizen, or green card holder, or whatever it is, or need H-1 visa. Because we're going to have to know, just make it easier, just put it in your resume. Now, I know there are people who've been laid off and they take a contract position just to be working, fine. And then you apply for a perm position, fine. But if you've been a contractor for 15 years and suddenly you're applying for a full-time staff position, I'm going to be suspicious. Why? Because I've worked as a contractor and I know that I get bored after 3 months, or I get tired of the internal politics, or, and I leave. So I do know people have made that jump, but just be willing to talk about it, because that is a red flag and we'll want to know. Similarly, if you live in Pacoima, California, and you're applying for a job in New England, are you planning on moving here? Do you have a spouse that is moving there and you're coming with them? Do you need relocation assistance? Let us know up front, because we're going to wonder. All right. Last but not least, not keeping your skills current. Keep up with technology, especially in the tech writing industry. Publishing technology is changing so fast. And I've had people say, I can learn FrameMaker in a weekend. And I go, great, why haven't you? Right? Nothing is worse than not getting a job because somebody else kept up with technology and you did not. Even if you buy a used copy on eBay or download a trial copy and create samples until your license runs out, at least it shows me, if you go on an interview, do you have, can you do conditional text in FrameMaker? You can show, yeah, I did this, this, and this. Even better if you can teach it to somebody else. So do a meetup or go to your STC meeting and say, okay, if anybody wants to learn how to do conditional text in FrameMaker, meet at the Starbucks on Main Street on Saturday morning, and then teach them how to do it. That way, when you go on an interview and they say, have you done conditional text in FrameMaker? You go, done conditional text, hair flip, I've taught conditional text. All right, just one more way that you can show that you're qualified for the position. Okay, now that we talked about all the bad things to do, let's summarize what to do. And this would be an excellent time to start typing questions in the question box if you have them. All right, 1, follow submission directions. 2, use good manners. I used to say good netiquette, but people didn't get that network etiquette, so I just say manners. Name your electronic resume so it can be identified. Use a professional email address. Have a flawless resume, 0 defects. Highlight your strengths, minimize your weaknesses, keep your skills current, and finally, and most importantly, include a summary of how your experience and skills match the job requirements. All right. I tell all my listening audience that one thing I'm happy to do is review your resume for you. Even if you're not looking, you never know when you might be escorted from your building on a layoff. So keep your resume current, have samples that you can show in an interview. If you just want me to have your resume on file, I can do that too. Send it to jack@prospringstaffing.com. By the way, buy one, get one registration is now open for LavaCon. You can register and bring your boss or colleague for free. All right. And then next week's webinar will be on how to ace an interview using a portfolio. I tend to use a hard copy portfolio where other people want to use an online portfolio, but I use mine as a tool to lead an interview through a very specific path where I want it to go. So that will be an interesting follow-on to this webinar. And we don't have any questions, so I'm going to end the webinar here. If anybody has any questions that they didn't want to ask in a public forum, feel free to email me at this email address or give me a call at the office. I'd be happy to answer questions. So thank you again for tuning in. We will send an email out with a link to this recording as soon as it's done in post-productions. Everybody have a great day. Have a great, safe holiday season if I don't see you next week online. And I'll see you soon. Ciao.